I've played Azur Lane every day for at least an hour for the last 6 years. It sucks. I'm thinking about quitting. You shouldn't play it. Azur Lane, more like Azur Lane. So stupid. Genuinely though, I am thinking about quitting the game, and I don't think most people should get into it. So, let's talk about it, shall we? So with me saying that, of course, the first question is, why? Why should you not play Azur Lane? Why did I play Azur Lane? Let's start there. Why did I play Azur Lane for 6 years, pretty much every day for at least an hour? Well, first of all, characters. I apologize in advance, by the way, for my bad handwriting. The only person that I know of that has worse handwriting than me is my English high school teacher. This game has 850 plus characters, like give or take. It's around 850 right now. Depends on if you include collab characters, that some of which aren't even available anymore to get. To put this in perspective, how many Pokemon generations is that? I should know this. I own all of these games. Let me think. See if I can guess off the top of my head how many generations of Pokemon that is. I want to say 7th gen, right? Hold on. Yeah, okay. Once again, my Pokemon autism wins out again. So for context, it took Pokemon 30 years to go from this game with 150 characters to this game with about 800. Azur Lane has done 850 in 7 years, give or take, depending on JP server versus, global servers and all that, but it should be 7 years for the global servers when this video is posted. But you may be wondering, Box, that sounds great and all, but Pokemon is the most profitable franchise in history. How does a company create more characters in less time and still make them interesting, unique, and have cool designs? So anyway, there's 850 characters in the game. All of these characters are based off of real ships, for the most part. There are some characters that are just collab characters from other franchises and media properties. There's a couple of Hololive collabs from back in the day, so you have a few VTubers in there, of course. But for the most part, all of them are based around real ships that existed around, I want to say, from the 1900s? Basically, they mostly focus on ships that were involved in World War II, because you have a lot of options there in that time frame. Occasionally, we'll get the occasional ghost pirate ship girl, but that's kind of rare. So for example, you get Enterprise, aka NT. She is based off of the real USS Enterprise, an American aircraft carrier that took part in World War II, the most decorated ship in US history. And now she's an anime girl. Or you get the HMS Queen Elizabeth, a real battleship, one of the first battleships to run on oil instead of coal. And now she is this Ojo-sama twin-tailed blonde girl who is surrounded by a bunch of English maids. A lot of the designs and character work will crib off of real-life lore about the ship. One of the fun designs here is Ranger. Here on the left, you have her pre-retrofit outfit. You can see RNG printed along her skirt. Obviously a reference to her name was also on her flight deck. You can also see a little patch on her bag that was a real World War II naval patch. And then for her post-retrofit design, you can see that because she was the largest aircraft carrier in the Atlantic Fleet, they obviously decided to represent that by giving her one of the largest chests amongst all of the characters in the first couple of years of the game. Of course, this also means that you do get ships from that period of German history. You might expect this to be a little controversial. As far as I can tell, nobody really seems to care. I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, I can think of a couple of reasons why people don't really seem to care about German waifus in this game. But, you know, I've never asked, so. This is Frederick der Gorb. We call her Fred. We're married. Oh, you can marry characters in this game, by the way. They sell these rings for like $3 to $4 in-game. You can get a pack of 2 for like $5, and you can oath the girl is in the game. And, you know, they have this nice little animation where you put the ring on her finger, and she's all dressed up nice, really pretty. No joke, so I always end up doing the oathing process on stream nowadays whenever I do my yearly account review. And so I have like 20 or 30 characters that all have the same anniversary. Gosh, it must suck to be that guy, like, actually in the game. I always think this about this game, like, my goodness, trying to manage like 800 people with all these like conflicting personalities and all these yandere characters, and they can literally tear you apart with their bare hands. And all these, it's impossible to have personal relationships with over 800 characters. Dude, it must suck being this guy. I do not envy him. Like, my goodness. I imagine it must have gotten to this point where every single time he gets a new girl in, and they're not just trying to jump him immediately, he must be like, thank God, a sane one. Here, come and work for me as my secretary, because at least you're not trying to have a workplace relationship with me. And then being your secretary increases their affection towards you. And then they want to jump your bones. So you must have imagined that he just has to keep cycling out girl after girl after girl after girl. Because at some point, it must be just hell. Like, can I please have a normal relationship with anybody? At least Enti is like, somewhat, like, she likes you, but like, at least she's not trying to jump your bones all the time. My goodness. Some of these more recent characters. But no, nobody seems to really care about the German waifus. I mean, I like some of the German waifus. Look, this is Graspi. She's one of my favorite characters in the game. Look at her, isn't she cute? She's got a schoolgirl outfit where she's got a little, like, those little corn horn things on her hands, you know, little yees, as the bag is apparently called. It's fun. She's cute. But look at Ulrich over here. She's got little spider mechanical tentacles, and she's got a schoolgirl skin where they're animated. It's cool. It's neat. There are some really good designs in this game. Honestly, I feel like it's such a shame that there's so many good designs in this game, because so many of them get buried. Just so many. I'll throw a couple up on screen, but there are like so many good designs or interesting designs in this game, and a lot of them have different artists and stuff, but they just kind of get, you know, just kind of buried because there's just so many of them. That being said, it is pretty easy to actually get these characters. The gacha is super easy. Like, the materials you need to pull for new characters are so easy to farm out. You basically have these cubes that are your main pull resource, along with your normal coins, money currency thing, and it costs a little bit of each to do a pull. I don't think I've ever run out of cubes in this game, like the actual pulling resource. I've run out of coins to not be able to pull them over, but never the cubes themselves, which is pretty nice, because I've played several other gacha games, and like, man, being free to play in some of those is just ass. I'm looking at you, Persona 5X. That was a disappointment. That was disappointing.
Hi, Editing Box here. I realized as I was working on this that I didn't mention the music of this game at all. There's some really banger soundtracks in this game. Turns out when you get a bunch of people to make music over the course of several years, there's some pretty good music in there. A lot of it is like battle music, and some of it is like way too epic for like the actual gameplay, but a lot of it is like really, really good. It's just a shame that the main menu music has never been updated because it's still a 51-second loop. I did turn off the music like a year or so into the game because I just couldn't stand listening to it anymore.
Of course, the game wants you to get these characters because it leads into how this game is monetized. So you have a few different types of monetization for this game. You have the rings, which I mentioned before. You have dock space, which I haven't really explained yet. Basically, you can only hold so many characters. If you want more slots for more characters, you have to buy more dock space. You can get some by playing the game and everything, but generally you're going to need to sink some money if you want to be able to hold on to all the characters, because, you know, at this point we're at 850 characters, right? So, and then last but certainly not least is, of course, skins for all of these characters. And these are the main methods of monetization in this gacha game. These vary in price quite a bit, from like, oh, what's the lowest one? I know what the highest one is. The highest is 1,680 gems, which is this game's pull currency. Let me double check what the lowest is. I want to say the lowest is 580. Okay, I just had to go double check. It's 700 is the lowest they go. I feel like I've seen 680 before, but the lowest I could find was 700 actually. Now, calculating these into real world prices is deliberately hard to do because of all the packs and like everything like that. But at their most expensive, at base price without any packs or double amounts per first purchase every year or whatever, the base amount is 1 USD to 60 gems, which means at that base value, this is actually 12 USD to 28 USD. Now, technically, this is like the most extreme version of this, right? Like, you will probably always get a better deal on gems so that this is not the actual price you're paying. This is like the worst scenario where you just buy the $1 pack over and over and over again. That being said, what you're actually probably looking at is more like $10 to $20, which is still a lot for what's ostensibly either moving or not moving PNGs. The lower end is usually for just still images with some new voice lines for one of the lower tier, like, rarity characters. They usually get less billing and booking. These higher tiers are something we've only gotten to semi-recently as they've begun releasing, like, animated PNGs with, like, moving arms and some animations and, like, some different interactions and stuff. In fact, you've probably seen one of these more expensive ones recently. A couple years ago, people found out that we have huge honkers in our game. There was a skin for a ship called Kaneshiro, who is not good at all. She is a support ship, and she doesn't support enough to outpace the damage loss of not having her do any actual damage. But she is a cowgirl, like a cow girl, kind of like a cat girl, but cow. And she's got massive udders. And so they put her in a outfit, and it went all over Twitter for like a couple of weeks there, a couple years ago.
So this is the skin? This is the skin? Naturally. I do want to say, that I think this is the first time that a mobile game has legitimately provided 800% value.
In fact, fairly recently, Google Play said, hey, Azur Lane, we're going to up you to 18 plus unless you take some of these skins out of the game because they are too raunchy for 17 and below. You will be categorized as an 18 plus game if you leave these in. There are skins, official skins, that you cannot post in the official Discord of the game. They are too raunchy for the official Discord. I want to say that this has been a gradual progression over time, and it somewhat is, but there were always horny skins in this game. It's just now we have them animated, and the amount of horny skins has gone up, really. Like, there were always the swimsuit skins. I don't really own many of them. I think most of the ones that I own are just because there are skins that you can earn for free, which is nice. Like, there are little events you can do and play the game, and you get a nice little skin for a low-tier character. But, you know, it's fun. It's good. Some free stuff is nice, you know. Well, free. You have to earn it, but yeah. But in general, that's why getting characters in this game is so easy. They'll usually add old ones to, like, a shop that you can farm them out for, like the PvP shop gets its own currency. You do PvP, you can earn some ships that way, or some of the other stores, or they'll add them to like the permanent pool, so while you're doing your normal pulls on an event, you might get a ship you didn't have before. They want you to get these characters. It is very easy to get characters because that is how they make their money. So what do you actually do in this game? Like, what is the actual gameplay? At this point, the game has basically been turned into an auto-battler. You can manually control your ships, and you can get a little bit more performance out of them that way. But for the most part, all the game and the content can be autoed. Because of this, most of your actual decision-making is just in your build and prep work. So which character you're using, what gear you're putting on them, what your composition is, all that kind of stuff is more important than the moment-to-moment, you know, gameplay, pretty much. Gear especially is the most important aspect of how powerful a ship is. How well it's actually able to use the best gear in the game is usually a pretty determining factor if it's meta relevant or not. And gear differs depending on the class of ship. So for example, you know, battleships have these big main guns. Carriers are going to have different planes and stuff that they can use in different class of planes. Destroyers are lighter, less heavily armored, but they fire faster, allowing them to clear out mobs quicker and deal with the suicide boats that rush you. They're also useful for clearing out submarines, enemy submarines. They have special gear for that. And so overall, the gear system and everything is fairly in-depth, and there's a lot to dig into there. So if you like this kind of thing where it's more prep work and crafting and build and stuff, this might be up your alley. You know, it's an auto-battler thing, right? So, but for a gacha game, that's kind of what you want, I feel like. You want it to be something that you can kind of like leave off to the side if you don't want to like replay the same stage for the 20th time, but like there's decisions to be made and things to farm out and hard endgame content that you have to, you know, kind of think about and plan for, or at least, you know, look up a strategy guide and collect all the necessary pieces and put it together and do it for yourself, right? Still, this is a waifu game, so 90% of the ships can clear 90% of the content. It's only really like that last 10% of really hard content that you really need to min-max for. So it's something that's avoidable. All of the event stages are always designed so that somebody can clear them within the 2 weeks that they come out, because each event runs for 2 weeks, well, 2 to 3 weeks. And they're all like relatively low level, so even if you come in, you can build up an account in those 2 weeks and be able to, you know, get all the ships that you want to. So that's pretty nice, because there are often, you know, people who come in for collab events and stuff, and you don't have to already have a built up account to like get the ships or the characters that you want, which is pretty nice actually, as far as gacha games go. Obviously, I just mentioned events. These are a set of stages with a story behind them, usually, that runs for like 2 weeks, has new characters, new equipment maybe, has a store where you can spend a currency you can only earn during that event. And these last for about 2 weeks, sometimes 3 on their initial run. And then for the rerun, they'll usually go for like a week now. They used to do the full events, now they've kind of shortened them down into 1 week events on the rerun, and then like added in some like speed up mechanics, like giving you some free pulls and stuff like that. And those are just so if you missed the event, either because you weren't playing at the time or because you just missed a character or something, that's your chance to get them again before they eventually put them into like the permanent pool and stuff. So speaking of permanent stuff. So you have your story stages, which is like where the main story happens, kind of? Not really anymore. It's where the initial story took place. Now most of the story is told through events and everything like that, as things keep updating and changing throughout the main story and giving context to what you're doing in the actual event stages. But these chapters are pretty standard and where you'll be farming out most of your coins and things between events and everything like that. There's 15 chapters currently. Each chapter has 4 stages. Chapters 1 through 12 are pretty standard, just like level difficulty curve going up. Chapters 13 through 15 are more specialized in their challenge. For example, chapter 13 has like a lot more planes than usual, 14 has subs. Doing these story stages or event stages costs oil, which is basically this game's energy system. The bigger the ship, the more oil it consumes per battle or whatever. This used to be more of an important thing early on in the game's life cycle. Nowadays, not so much. Especially since they've added in new content that's permanently available and doesn't require any oil called Operation Siren. This is a large map of the ocean. Oh shoot, is it the Atlantic or Pacific? I think it should be the Atlantic, right? Because Pacific, yeah. Okay. This is a large map of the Atlantic Ocean that you slowly take over and resets monthly. This is currently the main endgame content of the game, as this is where you farm out your endgame materials for equipment, as well as earning some special types of ships. Aside from that main content, there's also PvP, which is just 2 automated teams fighting each other. Some people get really sweaty over this. It's really not worth it. It's not a big deal. I've actually stopped doing PvP because I have everything I want from the shop, so there's not really a point in doing it anymore. Aside from this, there's also minigames that go along with the temporary events. They've started to make more of these always available to play, and doing so can get you some cosmetics from the associated event. There's also like a little side game, like not a mini game, but like a side game where that's like a child raising sim for one of the AI characters, and depending on how well or poorly you do, or like which direction you push her into, like being a sporty kid or a nerdy kid or whatever, she'll have like different personalities that she develops, and then you can have her as your secretary.
Hi, Editing Box back again. I just wanted to say I went in to record like an hour of footage for this child raising sim, and I ended up spending 3 hours on it because A, she's adorable, and B, yeah, it turns out the Persona guy loves a minigame that's all about planning a weekly schedule to raise your social stats, basically. Who would have guessed that I, of all people, would like the little child raising sim? And there's a whole other character they added. I might actually have to like come back for this. I might actually peak male fantasy, raising an adorable daughter. Ugh, my heart.
Your secretaries being the ship girls who greet you whenever you log into the game on the main screen there, while you're, up against the wall hoping nobody's looking over your shoulder. Dude, I remember playing this game out in public in college or whatever, and some of these loading screens, man, are so raunchy, and they load between every single battle, and dude, you just like, oh my god. There was a controversy like a few years ago over some of the loading screens being too raunchy for some of the community, and they were like, I don't want to play this out in public because of these, and so they, I think, took some of them out. It was this like Halloween succubus one, and apparently this was too raunchy. Are ones at the time that were in the game that I think are more egregious that I'm not sure if I can show on YouTube, so I won't. There was a hot spring one. If you know what I'm talking about, you know the one There's like a hot spring one with like one of the girls with playing a Nintendo Switch and stuff, and I thought that one was more egregious, but apparently it was the Halloween succubus one. Speaking of things you're probably hiding in public, there is now a 3D dorm system for some of the characters, so some of the characters have like full 3D models now, and you can interact with them in a little 3D environment, you know, give them treats and everything, pose them in different ways if you would like. I think a big part of me just enjoying this game and being so invested in this game was community stuff, obviously. The guild Discord that I joined for this game was like one of the first Discords I ever joined. I got into this game in like 2019, the summer after my graduation from high school. And so, you know, I was looking for people to talk to and everything, and obviously 2020 came around. This game exploded in popularity like a lot of other games did. In fact, there were a few days there where the game was so popular all of a sudden that I literally could not log in. Like, they had to open up new servers to deal with the overflowing amount of people that were just coming into the game. And I could not log in or do my dailies or do any polls or even interact with anything for like 3 days. It was a lot of fun, honestly. Like, I have a lot of good memories of, like, you know, talking with people and hanging out and everything over, you know, those few years there where we were all indoors. You know, things have gotten a little less, you know, busy and stuff, but, you know, people move on and everything. At some point I started making Google Docs for myself as like summaries of like what was in the event, which ships, what equipment was worth farming out and stuff. I started to make these for myself, and then some other people were interested, so I started posting them, you know, in the Discord and stuff and around, and, you know, people seemed to use them and find them worthwhile, so I kept doing them for quite a few years there, like pretty consistently. I got pretty good at using Google Docs and everything. I can do a lot of fun things with that now, so, you know, learn something new. The other major thing for me is just like the overall gradual progression that you get with these types of games. So for example, getting all my characters to level 100. This took a really long time. Like, at least 3 or 4 years, I want to say, of like focusing on this goal of like, I'm going to do this, I am going to work towards this over the course of like 3 or 4 years. You probably could have done it faster, honestly, if you were actively doing it. I end up using a lot of like the passive XP systems in the game. So like the dorm system where you could put girls in there, give them food, and they'd get XP and other things like that. And I kept up on this for, like I said, 3 or 4 years, you know, slowly making progress, getting, you know, a few here, a few there. Keep in mind, they're still releasing new characters, obviously. So I was trying to, you know, keep up a rate where I was leveling up more characters more quickly than they could put out new characters. Which again, this game has 850 characters or so. So they were putting them out at a pretty, you know, good rate. So I remember those last few months of just like counting down how many I had left. I remember like hitting the milestone of getting under 100 left. Like just that like slow gradual progression was just like so enticing to me, and just like getting to see every year like the account have more characters, more gear, just like get higher leveled. It was so gratifying. It still is, honestly, and it's part of the reason why I always streamed like the yearly account review, even all the way back in like, I want to say like the first year or so of playing this game. And that was also like in the first year or so of like streaming in general. Like I started streaming just random games to people in Discord, in that like Azur Lane Discord. Like that's where I started. So like, you know, this game has a very personal connection for me. And like I've always been working towards getting 100% of the characters. Like ever since I started playing this game, like that's my last big goal I think I have for this game. And it's something I wanted to get done before this game. Sorry, I mean before this video comes out. I wanted to get 100% and like, you know, have my yearly account review. This is like 6 years playing the game. I've got all the characters, and it's just not possible. And now comes the heel turn, because you may have forgotten after this last 10-20 minutes of glazing this game and talking about how much it means to me and like community and, you know, all that fun stuff and the fun characters, that This video is about why you should not play this game and why I no longer want to play this game. So let's talk about why I cannot get 100% of the characters in this game, and that should segue us nicely into my little, you know, spiel rant about why you really shouldn't be playing this game. Hello? This is a different day, as you can tell by the shirt. This is my 4th time recording this whole section. So this whole section that you're going to watch, I have recorded 3 other times.
Editor box here. I did my best to clean up this section, like I say in the video. I recorded this 4 times, 3 times back to back, without re-recording everything a 5th time and hoping that it's better. I don't know what else I can do to clean up this section. So if you hear any weird audio peaking with my voice, it's me, not your speakers. Sorry about that.
So hopefully this 4th time will be the best time, and I will have the most practice at it, and it will be the best version, and I won't need to cut down too much because I've already been at this for 3 hours. Okay. Wee. Wow. Wow. Pants. I just made pants instead of an N. Okay. Don't you make me. Don't you tell me. See me. Don't play Azur Lane. This game kind of sucks. So, okay. I wanted to get 100% of all the characters for this game. It's a goal I've had for a while. It tracked in game. It tracks all of the characters that are not collab characters because those are only available for a short amount of time. It's called collection. So I wanted to get 100% collection for this upcoming anniversary, but it's physically impossible for me to do. I think explaining why I can't get these 6 characters will be a good summation of my main problems with the game more recently, as 4 are currently just completely unavailable, and 2 are a pain to get. So, the unobtainable 4. Kind of like the Fantastic Four, but if all of them were the Invisible Woman, so you can't ever find them. The first 2 of these Invisible Women are Congo Muse, and Noshiro Muse. Don't be confused by the Muse at the end of their name or the weird U thing. It just means they're idol versions of the character. So there's like a normal Noshiro. This one's just an idol. And so these 2 are both from the same event. And this event was called Heart Linking Harmony. This event took place in late April of 2024. So last year, from when this video is being recorded. I think I was busy with something. Like something was eating up a lot of my time. I'm trying to remember. I can't quite remember what was going on, but I think there was like something I was working on, and it ate up a lot of time. Anyway, I didn't get the 2 characters. I either lost on the gacha, didn't realize I didn't have them, or I just got distracted. I didn't get them, right? Happens. Whatever. So, this was last year in April. It's currently the August of the next year. How much longer do I have to wait until I can get these characters again, right? So since I missed these characters in their first initial event, I have to wait for the rerun for the event, which will last 1 week. They used to last 2. They used to rerun the full event again. Now they have a condensed version that's like 1 week long. They give you some extra polls to make things easier. So since this event ran in April of 2024, and reruns tend to happen in like 2 years after the initial event happens, this one's probably going to be in like May of 2026, so May of next year, which is obviously already kind of far away. But let's say I'm busy, like something happens, I break a leg, my cat dies, whatever, something happens and I'm distracted from this booba waifu gacha game, right? Where I just get unlucky with the gacha again and I just don't get the characters, or like one of the characters or whatever. Well, at that point I have to wait until they put them in the permanent pool. So what this means is there are 3 build pools in the game. You have light, heavy, and special. These are always available, and so they might be added into one of those 3. Otherwise, they might be added to one of the many shops in the game, whether that's the PvP shop, the metal shop, the guild shop, whatever it is, right? They'll add them somewhere where you can either earn them or pull for them. However, as you can imagine, with 800 some characters, trying to make most of them available at all times, the standard 3 build pools are pretty bloated by this point. They've started adding more to shops and stuff to try and keep the numbers down, but it's just not enough. So things are pretty bloated, so getting the one ship, especially if they're of a higher rarity, that you want is pretty random and hard to do. Let's say we're at this point where I don't have either of these characters still. We're all the way here. They're in the permanent pool. Is there anything I can do to get these characters? Sure. So your next best bet, once they've been added to the permanent pool, is once again waiting for the Wishing Well. Wow. So this is a mini event that they'll do during the anniversary and like one other time during the year. This allows you to pick 2 characters that are in the permanent pool and make them more likely to show up, vastly increasing your odds of getting the ones you want, making them just as likely as like any sort of event character to be pulled. There are, however, some restrictions on this. You can only pick one of the build pools to pull the 2 characters from. So if you have one character in the light category and one in the heavy, you can't pick both. You have to pick 2 in the light or 2 in the heavy. So you'd have to wait for another Wishing Well event to come around to get the one you missed. The other restriction is that the character must have been in the permanent build pool for a while. How long? Well, you know, how about a year? So we're now at 2028. So because I missed these 2 characters here, I have to wait at least until 2026, maybe try again at 2027, and then finally, I'm probably last chance to get them is like in 2028, or I have to use one of the future Wishing Well events in like 2029 or, you know, 2030 or 2042 or 2907. The heat death of the universe before I get these 2 characters. But wait, there's more! I am currently missing a character called Everston. And you see, the funny thing about Everston is that her event was late April of this year. Man, what is it with me in late April? Like, what was I even doing, like, this late April that was taking up so much time that I missed this one character or whatever? Like, there's got to be something about April, or, like, something I was doing this late April. But anyway, the point is, 2025, right? I was already missing these 2 characters, so I already had to wait till at least 2026. Now, since it's this year, I have to wait until at least 2027 for the rerun of this character to come around. And you can start to see where the cycle comes in, right? Oh no, I'm missing a character. Oh, I can only have to wait 2 years until the character comes back around. Oh no, I'm missing another character. Oh, I only have to wait 2 years. And on and on and on and on and on we go. And this is what's been happening for the last 5 years or so. Like I said, I've been working towards this goal for a while now, and I'll just miss a girl here, miss a girl there, and then I'm just waiting and trying not to miss any more in the next few years. And it's just really frustrating, man. But let's just say you don't care about collection. You're like, I don't need every single character. It costs money to like get more dock space to even have all these characters. I'm just gonna get the ones that are good or that I like the design of, right? Which is fair. That is totally fair. So let's talk about that. So besides those 4 that I have to wait for events to come back around to get them, there's 2 other ships that I'm missing that I mentioned, right? I mentioned they were really annoying to get. So I'm missing USS New Orleans and the USS Houston. This one's from chapter 14.4, this one's from chapter 15.4. The farthest stage I've gotten to is 14.3, one right before 14.4. And you would assume if I can clear 14.3, I could clear 14.4, and I probably could, but I still don't want to because it sucks. The gameplay kind of sucks. The late game meta sucks, alright? So let's talk about which ships are good in this game. When I was talking about only getting the ships that are good and the ones you like, let's talk about which ones are good, shall we? We'll do something different. We'll use pink. Put a little anchor there. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay. Characters or ship girls are classified into different rarities. This is a pretty standard rarity system. You should be familiar with it if you've played any other gacha game, if you've played a game with randomly dropped loot, or if you've played Fortnite. And so it just goes based off color from left to right. You've got gray, blue, purple, gold. I didn't have gold, orange will have to do, and rainbow, right? Just like all the colors, just sparkly, shiny, right? So grays. Grays are weak. You mostly just use them to shove into other ships. I guess you're shoving the spare parts into them to enhance the stats of other higher tier ships and everything. But they're also fairly cheap to field. And in a game with an energy economy like this one, where we use oil and each battle costs a certain amount of oil per ship, having ships that are very energy efficient to field can be very useful for farming out coins or for any sort of event stages that they can do, which if you give them the right gear, they can do most event stages fairly easily. In fact, there's a pair of destroyers pretty well known for this called Cassin and Downs that everyone would use, as it would cost only 1 oil per battle. And so because of that, myself and a lot of other people used them and grew to like their characters, you know, a good amount. And so they ended up getting skins, which is pretty uncommon for common gray characters. And they're pretty fun skins. Look, she's in a shopping cart, being all moody. Look, she's like arranged a bunch of like canned food into a pig face. It was fun. They're fun characters and they're fun skins. Good for them. Next up we have blue. Blue ships are very beginner friendly. When you first start out the game, you're going to be using probably quite a few of these, and there's some that work pretty well until you can get some better options. For example, Portland, another ship that I used for a really long time, was a good tank in the early days, and when just starting out, relatively oil efficient as well, so I ended up using her for a really long time. Purple is when we start getting into the more like late game usable ships. So there are quite a few purple ships that have niche uses that continue to be relevant even into the late game and everything. Best example of this is Unicorn. Unicorn is a purple carrier that has existed since like the first year or so of the game. She's become a fan favorite, and she has been the best healer for most of the game's lifespan, arguably the entire lifespan of the game. And the other strength of purples is that they can be retrofitted into golds. Certain purple characters can be upgraded into a higher rarity. This is called a retrofit and is usually based off of a IRL retrofit that happened for that ship as the war dragged on and things had to be repaired or replaced. And now with the retrofit, she's no longer arguably the best healer. She is definitely the best healer in the game. Gold characters are usually good. Purple and gold were actually a lot more interchangeable than you would think. I remember especially back in the early days telling a lot of new players, hey, don't worry so much about rarity. Purple and gold are pretty interchangeable. There's some pretty bad gold ships, there's some pretty good purple ships, but generally gold ships are pretty good and they're your standard ships when it comes to like late game meta stuff. Last but certainly not least are the rainbow ships. So rainbow ships are your main source of power creep, and generally they have to be earned. So this could mean that there might be a small event where a couple of the gold ships got a special item that allowed them to be retrofitted to an even higher rarity of rainbow. I believe this is where the first rainbow ships came from. There was a Royal Navy battleship that got this first, and then there's also San Diego or Sandy, another fan favorite character. Very good cruiser with very good anti-air capabilities. Got the retrofit to be rainbow and is still used in stages where you need a lot of anti-air, for example chapter 13 where you have a lot more enemy planes and such. The other way to get rainbow ships is research ships or research. So these are ships that can be earned, they're always available. When they come out, they're pretty much always some of the best ships in the game. To earn them, you have to get enough ships of the same faction leveled up, and then take those ships into battle get XP on them, submit that XP, some money, some materials, and you can unlock these research ships. These research ships are gold and rainbow as well, but they're like a cut above. So if it's like gold, it's like gold 0.5. If it's a rainbow, it's like rainbow 0.5. At least for the time that they come out. As even some of these have gotten power crap, as we're now on wave 8 of these, so we've got 8 groups of like 5 or 6 of these ships. And then there's technically one more class of ships that I should talk about. So these are called meta ships, intentionally capitalized. These are ships from basically Doom timelines. It's story stuff, but basically Doom timelines, meta, metaverse, meta ships. And these are like purple and gold ships, but the way you earn them is through Operation Siren. That content I mentioned before with the like ocean map and everything. These are your rewards for doing those. And just like the research ships, they have their own materials that they require to like level up their skills or level up their stats and things. You know, stuff that you can farm out from Operation Siren, which, you know, makes sense. So these are the different rarities of ships and everything. And generally this makes sense, right? You know, you got your grays, your blues, your purple, gold, rainbow, all of it. And it makes sense. You know, you go up the scale, generally things get better. Purple and golds are kind of interchangeable, which is like the only little weird thing there. But it makes sense, right? Like, everything's got its place and things generally work how you would expect them to. However, I would say that things have begun to shift in the last couple of years. This is definitely how it was in like the first few years of the game, but you know, we're past the first few years of the game, power creep and all that. So things have shifted a little bit. So let me just draw this line. And on this side, we have collection, fodder. And then on this side, we have the useful ships. Yeah, you can see where this is going. So grays no longer matter for oil efficiency. Oil efficiency is dead. Rip of oil efficiency. I'm sure there's some people who are like, it's not dead. It's dead. They made some quality of life changes where you don't have to worry about oil anymore. Like I said, especially with Operation Siren being like the end game content for farming out materials for equipment and everything. And it not requiring oil. This really doesn't matter anymore. They're just enhancement now. We also haven't had any new comments come out in literally years. I think the last one that came out was in like the 2nd or 3rd year of the game. There was like a German event where they had some common ships drop from stages. Doesn't happen anymore. Same thing with blue. We haven't had a new blue ship in a long time. Purple ships still exist. They're still a thing. They're still releasing. They are now like 60% of all the ships that release. And they are just here as collection fodder. They are here to be ships that you can miss and not have 100% collection. They are there to screw me over specifically. They are also to sell you specifically skins. A lot of those fun designs that don't get enough recognition that I showed before mostly come from purple characters that just aren't usable at all. But they look fun, don't they? Buy the skin, buy it. This side is mostly untouched. The only thing I really have to change is rainbow ship. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so they've been added to the gacha now as well. Not the research ships; those are still around. We just got like the newest wave was 8, like literally a couple of months ago. But rainbow ships are now in the gacha. They're at pity for 200 pulls, which isn't too bad, but they're still our main source of power creep. And so now instead of having golds and purples be your like things you're using in the late game, it's just golds and rainbows. They just went up 1 rarity, made these harder to get. Now purples are pretty much useless. There might be some good purples that came out in the last several years. There's probably at least 1, but for the most part, as far as I'm aware, purples are not really being used in the late game at all anymore. The last one that I can think of was Unicorn, and she got a retrofit, so now she is gold. Oh yeah, and meta ships, they're on the left side of the line for a reason. This is my 4th time doing this bit. I intentionally put them on the left side of the line. Meta ships, outside of the first one that they ever released, are not worth the investment. They take a lot of time, they take unique materials, they're just not worth the time. They're not any better than any normal gold ship or any other purple ship. Purple ships, in fact, the purple meta ships, they're in our battle pass. We have a battle pass now. Ooh. Sorry, it's called the Fair Winds Cruise. I mean, it did give me like a couple of my favorite skins, so I guess there's that. I do like the travel skins for Enterprise and Yorktown. As annoying as all this is, the condensing down of like which ships are actually good and which ones get released, and like the fact there are so many ships that are released just so they can sell you more skins and as collection fodder and to, you know, pump up those numbers so you have to buy more dock space. Despite all that, I did say that 90% of the content can be done by 90% of the ships in the game. It's only that like last 10% that matters for that kind of stuff, and I stand by that. It's more about your gear, so let's talk about gear a minute.
Hi, Editing Box here again one last time. I'm realizing while editing this that I have not actually shown you any gameplay with audio and how much of a visual and audio mess and like just diarrhea this game can be during like combat. So I'm just going to show you an unedited random battle, and this is why I turned off all of the sound in the game after the second or third year.
立ちはだかってくる序章さんに値するどけ邪魔だ失礼しますね裁きよ私のもとで輝かしき御堂よ邪魔だあなたの力が必要だ失礼します我の射程内に真理あり裁きよ裁きよ時は来たれる裁きよくたばれ雑魚ど
So gear in this game breaks down by the same rarity scale that ships do. Unlike ships, they haven't been condensed into like 2 rarities. There's still ships that use a blue gun, for example, because it fires very quickly. And you don't care about actually doing damage with the gun, you just want to fire very quickly so you can proc their skill. Purple is still useful in some cases, gold is generally the standard, rainbow is usually the best, but gear should be used in its proper circumstances and not all rainbow gear should be used on all characters. In fact, not all rainbow gear can be used by all characters, as obviously different classes of ships have different gear that they can use. So all ships have 2 auxiliary slots on the left-hand side there, and this is for various support equipment, whether to buff their attack, buff their defense, give them passive healing, whatever it is. And then on the right-hand side, you have the 3 spots for weapons. So for example, for most battleships, you'll have a main gun, a secondary gun, and an anti-air gun. However, there are still differences between ships of the same type. For example, for battleships, the secondary gun is usually a destroyer class gun. However, some can carry the heavier cruiser class guns. Or carriers might have more a carrier might have more spots for fighters, like they might have 2 fighters and 1 bomber, or a fighter, a bomber, and a torpedo bomber, or 2 bombers and a torpedo bomber. And so depending on what kind of enemies you're going up against and how much air power they have, you might want more fighters or more bombers or more torpedo bombers or whatever. All ships also have an efficiency modifier on their weapon slots. This determines how well a ship can use the equipment in that slot. So obviously the higher the number the better. If you're down at 40%, you're not going to be able to use that nearly as well as other characters. If you're up at like 120%, you're doing a lot better than most characters, and 100% is baseline. This plus the ship's base stats and skills is how you differentiate between different ships. For example, San Diego or Sandy that I mentioned before, as a good anti-air cruiser. Not only does she have a high anti-air stat, but she has good efficiency with her anti-air guns. Whereas other cruisers might be more suited to being a tank or a DPS with the skills and stats to match up with that. Most of the stuff is fairly straightforward, except for the efficiency stat, as it makes it harder to gauge how much damage you're actually doing because it fires to how well the gear is being used. But this is all just stuff by playing the game for a while, like I did. There are a few different important mechanics and details that the game really doesn't explain to you that you have to go out of your way to do research for and look up guides for and everything. Speaking of guides, if you want to dig a bit deeper into this stuff, I would recommend Jimmy AL on YouTube. He does really good stuff. He has got really good videos and keeping up with all this stuff and learning how this stuff actually works for yourself. I watched a lot of his videos, took notes, looked at the wiki, did my own research, and that's the expertise that I'm basing this section of the video on. I don't know everything, but I probably know more than most people playing this game at this point, I would say. I mean, you would hope so after playing for several years and doing research and everything. But I think the best example of things that the game doesn't teach you is the armor system of enemies. So, these classes are light, medium, and heavy. Pretty self-explanatory. Light guys move fast, kind of squishy, they rush you sometimes. Heavy guys, big, chunky boys, do a lot of damage, take a lot of damage. Medium, somewhere in the middle of those two, right? Makes sense. So, like if you do, let's say 100% damage to light guys, maybe you'll do like half that amount to like heavy guys, right? And you'll do like, I don't know, 70 to medium. But the game doesn't tell you which one is which, and you have to look at external resources to figure this out. This is also a big problem because this is not how damage works for the armor types. No, this is what would make sense. What, you think you do more damage to light enemies and less to heavy? Come on. How about you do 70% damage to light enemies, and we'll just do 100 for medium. And we'll say like 90 for heavy. But why would it be like that? Because you're running a battleship. And that's how normal battleship ammo actually works, where it does less damage to light enemies, normal damage to medium enemies, and slightly less to heavy enemies. Further confounding how much damage a ship does, how much damage gear does. Because now you're stacking modifiers on modifiers. You have your stats, you have your skills, you have your efficiency bonus, you have these ammo modifiers. By the way, there are different types of ammo. Let's say you're running a battleship, right? Okay, we're sticking with a battleship. You're running AP ammo. Why don't you do 45% damage to light, 130% to medium, and 110% to heavy? Well, wait, there's more! AP ammo is one of several ammo types for battleships. Just battleships. These include ammo types that have effects like armor break, which is a whole other mechanic. There's ones that cause flooding. There's ones that can cause burning, setting the enemies on fire. There are ammo types that are specific to certain guns. The ammo types for battleships have things like shell speed, blast radius, accuracy. That's not even applying to the gun. This isn't the gun stuff. This is just the ammo type of the gun. And then you have the gun's accuracy, range, damage, rate of fire. And this is just for battleships. This isn't accounting for destroyer guns, cruiser guns, planes. Planes are a whole thing. You have the bombers, you have the torpedoes. Guess what? Bombers have different groupings of bombs. So they might have one big one, two smaller ones, or two big ones, or they have different drop times and blast radiuses. And the fighters have different anti-aircraft guns. And then you have torpedo bombers, which are good against certain targets, but not others. And none of this is explained to the player. And I've done a lot of research to try and figure all this stuff out, and I have given it an honest effort. I've done more research on some of this stuff than some of my college classes, and I passed those. The second time, I didn't even mention Meowficers or augments. Meowficers are basically Gamba, Gamba, Gamba for like some slight stat boosts. Augments are just there to give fan favorites slightly more boost or juice so they can use them at higher tier stuff and keep them from being power crept too hard. And this theme of digging in deeper into the game systems only for it to not be worthwhile not only shows up in trying to get deeper into the combat or trying to collect all the characters, but also in the story. Again, I tried. I took notes. I read through the first 2 years of the game's story. I've been here for most of the game's history. I can't bring myself to care about the story. I tried, I really did. It seems like the overall plot is kind of interesting, but the way it's presented is very, very bad. Just two PNGs talking back to each other with text boxes, no voice acting. Sometimes there'll be some nice art to like lay out a battle scene or a room or something. And there are a lot of talented people who have worked on this game or are working on this game, especially in the art department, obviously. But the dialogue is so banal, and there's no good central character to follow as far as I can tell. Every single event, every single character has to get in there one or two like character dialogue lines just so that you feel something about them, hopefully buy their skin. And it undermines the pacing of the overall story and everything that they're trying to tell. Obviously, I've recorded this section a few times now. I think my overall takeaway from this section, after having done it a few times, is that this should not be your main gacha game. If you're playing a lot of gacha games, you'll probably know about this, but most people who are playing a lot of gacha games focus on like one, maybe two, and then just kind of visit the others when there's a new event going on or when there's something that they want to see, right? I think this is a good side game. It's relatively quick to get through your dailies and everything. There's that constant gradual progress, as I mentioned before, and there are a lot of cool character designs and everything, but I don't think it's a good main game, because as I've shown here, it's fun to enjoy on a surface level, but the moment you try to dig deeper and care about it, you find that it's just not worth it. Which really sucks to say about a game that I've cared about and tried to dig deeper on for the last 5 or so years, but at this point, I think that's the truth. Maybe you'll enjoy some of these aspects more than I did. Maybe you'll enjoy the gear system more than I did, or you'll have more patience in getting all of the ships together, or maybe you'll enjoy the story more than I did. Or maybe you'll just enjoy the nice character designs and the skins, and you'll have fun with that. And that's fine. If that's what you want out of it, go for it, man. I hope you enjoy it, but I think for me, and probably for a lot of other people, it's not going to be worth the time commitment to dig deep into a lot of these different aspects of the game. Did it ever matter? I think so. In the sense that anything digital matters, and that I enjoyed it and other people enjoyed it, and we got to share that. When I was really into this game, I felt like there were a lot of achievable goals and fun things to do, and I guess 100% collection is still achievable. I just don't think it's worth it anymore. For example, getting all the characters to level 100 wasn't really necessary. Like I've said, most of the characters in this game end up not being viable in like the late game, so there's no point in investing in them. But I enjoyed it, and I learned something about what motivates me from doing that. And getting all the characters is still achievable. It would just take me longer than I think is worthwhile. And it would take me years, not because I'm working on it, but because I'm just waiting around for a character to become available again. It would take a while because of external factors that I can't control. But yeah, I guess like once my friends stopped playing as much, I didn't care as much. People stopped being interested in the Google Docs or using them, it seemed. So I stopped making them. That's just how things go. I guess my friends were just a bit ahead of me in that case of quitting the game and everything. I think the biggest fundamental flaw this game has is just too many characters. I think there's a reason most gacha games and just games in general don't have 800 plus characters. I mean, A, for balancing gameplay reasons, but also just because you can go more in depth with those characters rather than having them be so shallow like what they are with Azur Lane. Like, there are some good characters there that I enjoy. For example, when you first make your account, you get to choose between 3 different destroyer girls, kind of like a Pokemon starter. And so I picked Laffy. She's like this sleepy Japanese ship destroyer girl. I made the correct choice, as she is the only one who's gotten a UR rainbow version of her called Laffy 2. I have most of her skins too, besides like the ones that come from like real world purchases of like the Blu-ray set of the anime or something. But I have like the same attachment to her that I do towards Piplup and its evolutions. One of my favorite Pokemon starters, by the way. I spent the most time on any Pokemon game in Pokemon Platinum. Really enjoyed that game quite a lot. It's like my childhood. But I think having so many characters also kind of contributes to the problems with the story. As trying to have like 800 plus characters is bound to make any story convoluted and hard to follow a lot of the time. I mean, if you just think about the fact that the game is basing all of its characters off World War II ships, try and teach the entire naval history of World War II, including all the factions and all the skirmishes and everything. Now, I'm not saying Azur Lane is doing that, but it's kind of on the equivalent scale of what you're trying to do here. Probably the writing does get better as time goes on, where they centralize more on a few characters to represent each faction or something, or like 1 or 2 characters for each event. But I think there's a reason why event stories are now split off into their own thing and are completely ignorable unless you want to get all the stuff from an event. And even if you do want to get all the stuff, you just have to skip through the story a bunch of times. The reason why I took so many notes actually is because I thought I would make a video about the story, try to explain everything. I thought a couple times about making videos for Azur Lane. I thought I'd make videos about the individual characters, because once the server shut down, that's pretty much it. I mean, you could go probably look at the wiki and stuff, but it won't be quite the same, obviously. So I thought maybe making videos about the characters would be a good idea, right? You'd never run out of videos to make, that's for sure. I got like most 70–80% of the way through making 2 of them. One about Ranger, which I mentioned before, and one about, I think, U-225, if I remember correctly. One of the German submarines. The IRL lore on that is it sunk due to a toilet malfunction. You see, submarines have to maintain pressure inside so that the pressure coming from the outside water doesn't crush them like a can, right? And so trying to flush things out of a submarine while underwater can be a bit of a tricky task. And so it wasn't until like the 1940s and 50s that submarines started to get like toilets of any kind that could be used while they were submerged. And so there was this over-engineered German toilet in this submarine. One that was so over-engineered, you needed a technician to flush it. The captain decided that he didn't need the engineer. The sub immediately began taking on water straight from the toilet and eventually sank. The crew was forced to swim to shore and spent the rest of the war as POWs. I mean, there's a lot of interesting IRL lore for a lot of these ships because it's from World War II a lot of the time. World War II has a lot of interesting history, but I just felt like I wasn't qualified to properly document that alongside the gameplay and the waifu stuff, and like trying to hit that right mix of, you know, it's an anime girl, but it's also an actual ship that people lived and died on is kind of hard to balance. So I ended up not making those videos. I think the other major flaw of this game is just not explaining its mechanics properly to the player, obviously. That and just feature creep or feature bloat or whatever you want to call it, where they just keep grabbing features from other gacha games and just stuffing it into Azur Lane. Like the UI skins from Blue Archive, or the 3D dorm system from games like GFL 2, Girls Frontline 2, which does a much better job at it. Because, you know, the game was designed from the ground up to have a 3D dorm system. It's not something where the devs have to tack it on 7 years into the lifespan and add an update that is like 100 gigabytes for all these 3D models and things, which that 100 gigabytes really adds up when it comes to a mobile game. I mostly play on emulator at this point. I think I've actually uninstalled Azur Lane from my phone, but I've uninstalled like all my gacha games from my phone. Now I just play them on PC, so I'm not bothered by them all the time. But I do know of at least 3 or 4 people who uninstalled Azur Lane from their phone when that update dropped because they just couldn't have it on their phone, whether or not they had an emulator or some other way to play Azur Lane. Actually, this might sound a little weird, but the 3D dorm is like one of the main reasons I started thinking about quitting this game more seriously. Hold on, let me move. Something's right in my eye. Because as you may have noticed, all my favorite skins have been like the casual skins, the schoolwear skins, the travel outfit skins, not the booba skins. And this 3D dorm thing kind of like leans way too in the horny side for me. And also it's just a worse version of GFL2's 3D dorm. And I've already played GFL2 and I would prefer that if I'm gonna mess around with 3D dorm stuff. I'm almost 25, I've kind of reached that point in my life where I don't want to be horny, I just want to be happy. There's 2 sets of beginner missions for the new characters that they added to the 3D dorm. The servers will go down before I ever touch those beginner missions for the 3D dorm. And I think as we get closer to the end of Azur Lane's life cycle, I think that they're just going to keep trying to see how far they can push things and how much money they can get out of things. They've already announced a new Azur Lane game, so kind of like a sequel, like new gacha game. So they're definitely seeing on the horizon that they're going to have to end of service this game at some point in the next 3 or 4 years probably. I think the only major update left for this game is probably just being able to get siren characters, the enemy ships. That's something I've been predicting for literally years at this point, like several years. I think I've got screenshots of me saying this several years ago. I'm just saying this now so I can say I told you so later when it does happen. As you can probably tell, this video isn't my normal type of video. For one, I showed my face, which you can probably tell why I don't do that too often. I swear I shaved like before this recording session and the last recording session. I'm just cursed to be eternally furry. Not like, well, hairy, not furry. Could have been a femboy, could have been a twink, but nope, too hairy for it. But obviously this video is very personal for me. As many gripes as I have about Azur Lane, obviously I've spent a lot of time with it, and it kind of encapsulates a period of my life. But yeah, I'll be streaming the game one last time, take a look at my account one more time on stream, and then I don't think I'm gonna really talk about or make any content about it in the near future after that. Otherwise, if you appreciate the female form, I'm playing Nier Automata on the weekends right now. Technically we're playing as 9s right now, 9S, so, you know, there's also, if you're into twinks, there you go. Yeah, I think I'm just ready to move on with my life from Azur Lane. I'm not sure what the next thing will be, but maybe I'll see you there for that. Otherwise, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and in case I don't see you, hope you have a good afternoon, good evening, and good night. See ya!